Thank you, Devin. And one can never be too cautious, especially with the odd diseases and, little bugs that you can get out there. And this morning we're going to talk about one that was kind of popularized earlier in the year because of a famous actor's death. And it's going to be the hantavirus. So thanks for joining me this morning, Nurse Christina Paris.
Good morning.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you on. And this morning it's the hantavirus. I had not heard much about it before this year, especially this morning, but what is the hantavirus?
Yeah, and so you're referring to Gene Hackman's wife.
Exactly.
She died of hantavirus, and people were wondering, how could somebody like this, they're wealthy, they live in a nice area, how could they have come in contact with this? So it is a virus. It affects the lungs a lot, causes leaky lungs. So, pardon me, you actually get fluid that will leak into your lungs because it affects the cells there, those small little cells that line the lungs. But it's spread through rodents. So mice droppings, mice urine, mice saliva. And, we're not immune to that. While the cases here in Wisconsin are relatively low, we do have mice. We see them. I just had one in my car, and it's a new car, but it made its way up into the filters, so they can find their way in, and they're, even the best garages and sheds we put out here, we have them. So it's something that we do deal with here in Wisconsin.
Well, that is good to be aware of. So what are some of the symptoms of this hantavirus?
So there's two specific types of hantavirus. There is the hantavirus pulmonary syndrome and then hemorrhagic fever renal syndrome.
Oh, goodness.
So we'll talk about the first one, the pulmonary syndrome. So that one you're just going to see, fatigue, fever. You're going to have headaches. You're going to be experiencing some muscle aches, chills, dizziness. You might even have some GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. This is, once again, the hard thing because it sounds just like everything else that we have out there. And then for the hemorrhagic fever, the symptoms might be just a little different. So this one is more severe because it can affect your kidneys as well as the lungs. So you're going to have intense headaches, maybe back or abdominal pain, fever, chills, nausea. You might even have some blurred vision. And then as this progresses, you're going to have low blood pressure, and you might even go into shock just because of the lack of blood flow. And you could have some internal bleeding because, again, the vessels get leaky. And then kidney failure, so you can get some fluid overload in your kidneys. So it's potentially serious, as we found out from Gene Hackman's wife. That's how she died. And so it can be a potentially serious virus.
So how would it be diagnosed exactly then?
Yep, so there are blood tests for these. Just like Lyme disease and all these other viruses, sometimes it's hard to detect them right away. And also your symptoms can come on, 10 to 14 days after exposure. So you may not even remember that you were at the cabin over the weekend or that you were cleaning the garage, 2 weeks ago when you come down with this. And so we tend to think, oh, we just have a cold, or we just had the flu, so it's really identifying it through a blood test. And again, it can take time. Even Lyme disease, if you test somebody the day after or 2 days after they've pulled the tick off, it may not show up. Your body has to develop these antibodies before they can really be seen.
I hear you. And then after you do diagnose this, if you can get it diagnosed, what's the treatment look like?
So again, this is a virus. Viruses, antibiotics won't work for viruses. There's no specific antiviral for this. There are a few for other things. We know that COVID has one. We know that flu has one. But there is not an HIV has one, but there's not one for the hantavirus. virus. So it's going to be symptom management.
Right.
If at any point you feel like whatever you have is getting worse or potentially, or if you can think of the things you were exposed to that can help your doctor. Otherwise, we tend to just, kind of get tunnel vision and go, oh, it's just a cold, or you just have the flu, or you just, so weird things. You need to be the one to advocate for yourself. You need to be the one to constantly tell your doctor, look, something's wrong. This is not right. Something's wrong. They're not just going to keep calling you. They have so many patients, and not that they don't care. It's just healthcare right now keeps the healthcare staff very busy. So you have to be your own advocate.
Right. Well, thank you for, kind of explaining what this is and what to be on the lookout for, because you never know. Most of the times, like you said, in Wisconsin, very low cases.
Right.
But, it's just good to be aware that, just tell your doctor everything.
Right.
You never know when the key might be in there somewhere.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time this morning, Nurse Christina.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. And we'll have your What's Trending right after this commercial break.